Why does ISIS want to attack Russia? ISIS is the enemy of America, and Syria, and Iran, and Russia, and Iraq, and the Taliban, and the UK, and Russia and ISIS have fought for years. HTTPS. Russia and ISIS have been in armed conflict for years, mostly in Syria. They just decided to increase attacks in Russia. There's a chance ISIS command believe Russian forces are weakened, and there's enough instability they might find it easier to carry out attacks and do hard damage. The Islamic State itself is a jihadist militant group and opposes anyone who isn't them. ISIS is the common enemy of every human. It is not like Al-Qaeda, which is built on alliances and is okay with some countries. ISIS is hateful to every country, nation except itself. It attacks Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah groups, countries like Pakistan, Iran, Yemen, European countries, America, Asian countries. It was born out of vacuum created after Saddam fell, so 9/11 and American reaction to it is an indirect contributor to this inception. ISIS is just Islam les. All the rest of the world are its enemies, including moderate Muslims. It is one of the most radical forms of fundamentalism. I wonder if we ever met such a thing in world history. To ISIS, Talibans are moderate pusses. ISIS-K is big in Afghanistan and neighboring places, and Afghans have a big beef to pick with Russia. The fact that they have other enemies too does not remove this. As I understand, this attack was by ISIS-K, which is mostly formed around the Stan countries, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, etc. Most of the Stan countries have been under USSR Russia repression in one way or another in the past century or so. And Russia is very distracted with Ukraine. I mean, it's like the Eye of Sauron, distracted by Ukraine, so it missed out a small attack from another place. If you are going to attack Russia and you are not Ukraine, now will be a good time. Better time will probably be before Putin's re-election. He would still have won, but maybe they didn't have everything prepared before now. Russia fights against radical Islam in Syria and also in Dagestan and Ingushetia. Even if Kim Kardashian gets pregnant, ISIS would take credit for that. Russia fights ISIS in Syria to preserve their interests in the region. ISIS has literally zero allies, only enemies. They are so extreme that they consider Hamas and Al-Qaeda to be apostate groups and even went to war with the Taliban. ISIS wants to establish a Salafi caliphate in the broader Middle East, and their main regional enemies are the governments of Iran and Syria, as well as Hezbollah and Kurdish fighters. Russia intervened in the Syrian civil war to help the Syrian government contain all anti-government factions, including ISIS. ISIS is everyone's enemy. No developed nation likes radical Islamic terrorism. They are the enemy of everybody. ISIS gains power through terrorist attacks. They want to revert the world to the strictest form of Islam and hope for Armageddon and the return of Allah and punishment of the infidels. Putin has routinely oppressed Muslims in Russia, such as Chechnya and Dagestan. Russia fights ISIS-aligned groups in Syria and the Sahel. See, ISIS is nut job death cult that just wants to kill. 1. Russian bombing in Syria. 2. Russian bombing of Chechnya and Dagestan Muslim republics. 3. Way back, USSR's war in Afghanistan. Because they could. My personal theory is that all intelligence and security forces in Russia are fully mobilized in the war in Ukraine, and they didn't keep the usual suspects on watch. Having one maniac for a mystical crisis using a kitchen knife to stab people or renting a truck to plow into a crowd, that's one thing. Having a fully equipped commando of 4 getting to Moscow to commit a slaughter, that's another. Major fuck up by the services. Russia has been at war with Islam since before 9/11 even happened. Read up on modern Russian history. ISIS is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Everyone is Syria hates ISIS. The Russians fight them, Assad fights them, the Kurds fight them, the Turks fight them, the Americans fight them, the Syrian rebels fight them. Loads of people have interests in Syria, and ISIS is an obstacle for literally everyone. Russia has oppressed its Muslim-majority regions within their borders for years, not to mention their war in Afghanistan in the 80s and their presence in Syria's civil war. I'm not convinced about ISIS this time.